Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Red Rising Book 2, Chapters 26, 27, 28, and 29, Puppet Master, Jelly Beans, The Storm Sons, and Old Man's Wrath. In these chapters, Darrow has to trick/force his old master into taking sides in this war. It's really, I hated watching this because the guy just wants to fucking retire and get out of it. And then there's the other thing. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Alex for commissioning this episode. You guys, you know, I'm going to come out of the gate talking about Tactus. I wasn't wrong about him, it turns out, but I was wrong that he was going to be able to get away with it. I am not angry, just to be clear, at, what's his name? Aulos? What is, Arcos? I get it. I really get it. I don't think he was wrong. I feel like if I were Arcos and I watched what happened with Darrow, I'd be pretty pissed. So I just don't want to come out yelling, especially after everything that has just happened to Arcos. He has just been put in such a shit position. And the fact that Darrow wants to, spare this kid, frankly, fuck what Darrow wants a whole bit. After this all, you know what I mean? I could see doing it almost as an act of spite to Darrow. I don't really feel like that seems as if it's true to Arcos' nature. I get the impression that he tends to be more level-headed and rational than that, and not somebody who gives into spite. But I'm just saying that if that were how he was feeling, I would understand it. But guys, it was so well written, a scene. The whole thing is so tense. And the way this author writes it felt like the way you write a scene that's about to go bad. So the fact that, and by go bad, I mean that Tactus is going to, at the last second, decide to lash out at these children. There's a moment where it's written the kids allow themselves smiles of hope, which is just the wording that I would expect if they were slaughtered in the next sentence. And yet, that's not what happens. So it makes everything this, I really wasn't sure which direction it was going to go in. I really wasn't. I wanted so badly for Tactus to drop it. And I genuinely don't think I would have predicted by then that he was actually going to drop it. I was on the edge of my seat for this. And then he does. And you guys, it is agonizing. It's so, oh my God. So I'm gonna back up now and finish talking about that scene once I get to it. But it was really beautiful and so sad. So, all right. Chapter 26, we're picking up right after Darrow has said, "No, you misunderstand. I want to steal all of the ships." And Pliny looks at Augustus, starting off in the chapter 26, and he basically is like, look, you do this and that's it. This is war. And the Andromeda's family is like, dude, it is war. What do you even mean by that? That ship has sailed, my friend. And he's like, no, it hasn't, though. This is a different situation. It's different. You know it's different. And to a point, I can understand why he believes that. But on the other hand, it really seems like he is much more optimistic than anybody else about how this could possibly go a different way. Like, and this is borne out in the next few moments. So, you guys, this was so annoying to read. First, Darrow explains that he wants to steal the students. I want to steal all of the students, not to fight, but to ransom. And Mustang just starts laughing and says, "Are you insane, Darrow?" "Virginia, control yourself." "I am under control, Father. Your attack dog isn't. You forget your place. And you forget how Claudius looked dead on the ground. Leto, too. Do you want that for the rest of us?" She regrets the words as soon as they leave her lips. "Shut your mouth, girl." Augustus shudders with wrath. His bony fingers clutch the end of the table till it creaks. "You've been unhinged since you let that Bologna boy between your legs, walking in here like a pixie pomp, eating that apple like a child. Stop being a sideshow whore and live up to your name." And at this point, Pliny feels like, I know what I'll do. I'll chime in. And he says something about how, well, maybe if she hadn't spent so much time fucking, her brain wouldn't be so addled. But, you know, all that cum up in there has probably messed up her brains. And that's not what he says, but it's like not too far from what he says, basically. Horizontal diplomacy is what he calls it. And I just really want to, like, point out that women getting shit for defending themselves with sex is such an old story. And it has often been the only means available to us. So it's just really infuriating that it's dismissed the way that it is, because there are so many instances where it just feels like, what did you want us to do? How did you think this was going to go? And it seems to a point like her plan had been working. So as I understand that it feels distasteful to people who are used to being able to just say what they want and get it. She was not in that situation, guys. And the fact that y'all just do not seem to appreciate the level of sacrifice she was making doing what she was doing, it just says a lot about them, really. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, oh God, that made me so angry. It really made me so angry. I was surprised at like the rage that I felt in response to it. And sure enough, as soon as he says this, Cavax lunges at him, and Mustang has to intervene and be like, "Yo, I can defend myself, first of all." And then she says, "I would be bitter too if my wife bent over backward to make sure so many of your young mercenaries learned how to properly sheathe their swords." Excuse me? I would like to know more about that, please. Just, for instance, I would just like to know what the fuck that means. What does that mean? Where is that coming from? Oh my God. Cassie's in the chat. "Embarrassed to say this is the first time I've consciously clocked the double standard between genders as grating. I don't know if it's intentional or not on the part of Howler number 1, but they are appearing like thorns on the most beautiful rose. After Pliny insults Mustang for sleeping with Cassius, Mustang humiliates Pliny by calling out the fact that his wife bent over backward." Oh yeah, both barbs aim at a woman being sexually active. "I don't like promiscuity as it gently carries negative connotations." Oh, I see what you mean. Like using sexually active instead of promiscuous. Fair, yeah. But when we first meet Pliny and Leto in the Golden Sun, Pliny jokes that he gave up one of his roses to see an obsidian as Ares. Jackass, I don't recall any mention of Mustang receiving a stipend to populate a harem. Would Fitchner's comment about being laid so much by golden stock land the same if Fitchner were female? Oh yeah. And it's mentioned by Darrow in this scene as well that women there aren't many of them in this room. So there's just a lot of, and it makes sense because the whole culture in this universe is based on the Romans, which was really, really patriarchal. So it makes sense if they're going to be idolizing the Romans so much that they would also participate in a system that is fucked. Because obviously the way this universe works, eugenics and like the concepts of who is physically the strongest are a major factor in deciding who gets to be powerful. And women are often, not always, but often physically less strong. And so it just makes a lot of sense that they would be like, oh, and you know what? Maybe we could make women stronger by using eugenics that way. But we aren't going to create a level playing field. Like, I like to think that the Golds could have done it. They could have made women as physically strong. And they were just like, no, that's not what women are for. That's not what we do. I just, I'm inventing that, but it feels true to me. That's all I can say. So yeah, the situation, like, there's definitely a lot of patriarchy here. And I know I said this already, but Darrow participates in it too. He notes it, but he participates in it as well. He has assumed for so many times that Mustang isn't as smart as he is. And he keeps being proven wrong, and he keeps still, like, underestimating her. And then there's the aspect of robbing people of agency, which is what's happened to me with, like, Darrow finding out his wife was pregnant and him deciding to be enraged even more at Augustus and not thinking, but my wife chose to die knowing this. Not to say Augustus would then be not culpable, but you know what I'm saying. And then there's the whole situation with, oh my God, what is his name? The one who was into Quinn and is very angry at Darrow now. He is blaming Darrow in a way that completely ignores the fact that Quinn wanted to be where she was. She chose the job. She loved it. She would not have picked anywhere else to be. And Darrow wasn't the one who called them to be his backup. Mustang was. And yet, Roke, thank you. And yet, her decision to do all of this is being laid squarely at Darrow's feet. And I get what Roke says later about the fact that Darrow is basically so overbearing that he decides what's best for his friends, regardless of what they would want to do, because he doesn't share information. It's not exactly true about the situation with Roke because he doesn't know what Darrow was actually intending to do when he drugged him. But even if it were true, it's kind of ironic for Roke to be upset with Darrow about not allowing them to know enough to have agency when he's also denying Quinn's agency. Like, Quinn wasn't demanding to know more. She wasn't asking more and being rebuffed. She was choosing to act on what she knew, and that was enough for her. And maybe it wasn't for Roke, but that's not her problem. And that wasn't Darrow's problem. So it feels very much like there's a bit of a pattern of some women getting denied their agency in their actions by the men. And I don't feel like that's necessarily an accident. I think that may be what the author is doing on purpose to illustrate how men still see women this way in this universe. And so they are robbing them of their agency because that's the nature of patriarchy and the way that they see them. It may be on purpose. It also may not be. It may be the author. It may be him not really seeing what he's doing. It could just be him being like, well, I'm about to make Roke like sort of unfair on purpose. Maybe that was part of the point as well. It could be a lot of things, in terms of like the way he is coming at this in terms of storytelling. But anyway, so we'll get back to the thing here. Mustang says, but Pliny's right. I would have avoided this war, and I tried to. That's why I was fucking Bologna's. But guess what? It's here. And I love the way, because I knew as soon as she came in the way that she did, it was all a setup. I knew immediately her and Darrow have something worked out about how they're going to like present this. And sure enough, she comes in hot with the like, I think it's a stupid idea that's probably going to get a lot of us killed. I don't necessarily feel like it's the right call or a good call. And when like put to, well, what do you think the sovereign would do? She says, if we have a victory and sue for peace, either from a position of strength or weakness, she will accept the overture. You see? Pliny beams. Mustang isn't finished. Yeah, Pliny, bro. She will accept the overture? That's a very telling way to say that, my guy. You aren't clocking that? She will accept the overture is the most superficial way that you could word it. Because that's exactly what it is. A superficial acceptance that isn't going to be borne out. Because this woman is very tricksy. I don't know how else to say it. But she is, though. And I cannot get enough of the fact that Pliny just really thinks the sovereign is going to welcome them back. My guy, what world are you living in? Have you been paying any attention at all? What is the matter with you? It's just like shocking to me. He's just living in a fantasy. So finally, she says she'll suggest a neutral location, and on that day when we go make peace, she will do everything in her power to kill all of us. Pliny looks back and forth between us, realizing how easily he's been played. That is so embarrassing for you. So Augustus is like, yep, we're going to do what he says. And immediately Cavax is like, I'm coming with you where you're heading to the gas giants. And he says, no. Let us do this for you. You forget who I am, my friend. Apologies, I did not mean... Augustus waves the apology away and turns to Mustang. Daughter, you will take what elements of the fleet you need to execute the second portion of Darrow's plan. Watching Pliny now is like watching a child try to hold on to a handful of sand. He doesn't understand the course things have taken, but he's not fool enough to make his play now. He will wait in the grass like the snake he is. So, yeah, this thing with Cavax and the fact that he like wants to go with him, he's like, they're going to completely destroy you, dude. Allow us to come. And it's interesting that Augustus won't let him. I really don't know what to make of that. Like, it seems sincere on Cavax's part. I don't think he's a two-timer. I don't get that impression at all from that whole family. So what's Augustus's issue here? So Augustus then, his last thing he says is, my friends, Darrow has demonstrated powers none of you possess. He predicts what I want. I want to be king. Make me so. Dismissed. So then there's an interesting scene where Augustus speaks privately with Darrow and is like, are you a fucking Democrat? And I really enjoyed this because I should have seen it coming, that this was going to wind up being a concern. You can't urge the slaves to take over their master's house, give them the motivation and the knowledge that they outnumber everybody, and then become the master without them noting that that is what has happened. Like, it just honestly, I felt like probably they're not going to have enough, they won't be angry enough with Darrow's rule because he will be fair to them, that they'll try and rise against him. They will see him as like a symbol of something. And I think that's ultimately what Darrow's theory is about the short-term handling of this. Because, you know, the concern here that Augustus has, it's coming from a different place than any concern of this nature that Darrow would have. Darrow doesn't want them to rise up against him either. Like, not really, not right now. That's his ultimate plan eventually for all the colors later on down the line. But as of right now, he does not need that smoke. He's got shit to do. So him and Augustus are temporarily on the same side on that. But what he thinks is, I can bide my time by being a decent master and they will admire me and then I can make other moves. And Augustus is like, people are going to hear what you said and make assumptions about my family and what we believe. And so his is a much more like big picture stance and concern. And he says, do you know what would happen if other governors thought us reformers? And he shatters a couple glasses in highly theatrical fashion. It is bad enough my daughter had the ear of the reformer bloc on Luna. You cannot seem political. Stay a warrior. Stay simple. Do you understand? What if the low colors rally to us, I want to ask, but he would have his obsidians kill me where I stand. That is a hell of an assumption to make. I don't really think he's wrong, just for the record. But I couldn't help but think, like, just that question, and it would be enough to kill him. He's probably right, actually, when I really stopped to consider, you know. But there was a moment for me of like, wow, oh, that's extreme. Well, you know, like, and again, I just should have seen this coming. But I was so busy appreciating that his plan worked that I didn't let myself get worried about ultimately what this could mean, even though I know everything's fucking recorded. He said that shit over like an intercom, and I have to assume, I feel like he had this on camera in his tooth at the time, right? That's the recording device that he wound up giving up to the jackal a little bit later. So, yeah, I should have anticipated this. Darrow should have anticipated it, to be honest. Like, he's taken very aback by the question in the first place. And he shouldn't have been. He should have really thought through a little bit what impression this was going to give. But I am totally willing to forgive it, just for the record. I'm not, like, really criticizing him in a sincere way. I just mean more like, man, that felt like a risk that he should have been aware of. But he was also in the midst of a life or death situation. Like, the stakes were insane. So I'm really not genuinely holding it against him. So, yeah. He finally says, can I trust you? And Darrow says, in what way? Which was, I loved that answer. And it's something that I also would probably say in the moment, because, like, there are some people to whom I would simply say yes, but not everybody. And he says, can I trust you with power autonomous from my own? That is when many leave their lords. It is when hunger fills their eyes. The Romans learned this time and time again. It is why they did not let generals cross the Rubicon with their armies without the permission of the Senate. Men with armies soon begin to realize how strong they are, and they know that their particular strength is not forever. It must be used with haste before their army leaves them. but hasty decisions can ruin empires. My son, for instance, must never be allowed such power. And when Darrow brings up the media business that he's buying up, he's like, yeah, and it's a smart move, but honestly, it's not enough for the Augustus name. It's a slow burn, and that's not really the kind of power that's impressive or commands people. It's the sort of thing that like amasses power, but it's a sneaky sort of power, which he does not admire, you know? And I love when he says, it's like this fast power. Can I trust you with it? Darrow says, you must. I am the only man who can go to Lorne. And evidently, this was not something that Augustus had thought Darrow would think through. He is surprised that Darrow has jumped to this position already. And I keep thinking, you know, I'm trying to think how to word this. I can't help but think Darrow's showing that he had already thought of this may have been a little bit of a mistake. Not because it's... I just think Darrow is smarter than most people can tell. It seems like they just really assume he is a brute, a warrior. And what he manages to pull off is by sheer force of personality, but not like due to intelligence. And I think reminding Augustus how intelligent he is and how good he is at anticipating what somebody is going to do, I kind of think you want to... It's difficult because he needs Augustus to trust his instincts and to see him as intelligent enough to trust. But he can't be so intelligent that it's threatening to Augustus. And there are times where I feel like, Darrow, you need to sheathe that a little bit. You know what I mean? It just, I don't know if this is a guy who can see another person leaping to this kind of conclusion, like at this instance in particular, and not have it not give him pause a little bit. So he says, I'll ask Lorne, because he taught me the razor, and Augustus says, and because he loves you. And Darrow is taken really aback by this and sort of protests over it. And Augustus is like, no. Trust me. You remind him of his sons. You are more competent than they were, and you have fewer morals than they did, which is actually probably for the best. But he definitely loves you. And he hates my ass. Hates me. So, yeah, you got to do this. And Darrow says he won't give him a choice about it. And I was like, oh boy, what's this going to be like now? So then we go to the Telemonuses that are in the hall. And they give him some hugs. And it turns out that Darrow's been like avoiding them because he's so ashamed of what happened with Pax. And they, out of the gate, are like, we don't blame you for it. Just FYI. Like, he never lost to anybody except for you. He fell for a friend. And as far as we're concerned, that's the best possible way to die. And I love this. Kavik scoops up his fox. It licks his neck and peers fiercely at me before it nuzzles into his thick red beard. It has a white chest, black legs, and dark russet fur covering the rest of its body. And it's just, I want to see it. I just really want to see it. You guys, there's a lot about this series that I think would be interesting on the big screen. And it's the sort of thing where I don't want them to go too crazy with it. I don't want everything filmed in front of a green screen. It's, you know what I'm saying? Like, I really hate that look when everything looks like a video game. There's just a sense of nothingness to a lot of it. But I would like, for example, the scene later when he goes and speaks to Lorne and he's really having difficulty walking because the gravity is so low. How cool would it be to see that on screen? The different planets they visit and the difference in gravity on each of them would be fascinating to watch. I just think a project like this brought to the screen, you would really need a director who understood that all of these considerations are just like the seasoning and not the main course, because so many properties that are like sci-fi, they have like when they're on screen, they have such a focus on the visual aspects and being like impressive in that sense that they kind of let other things suffer for the sake of the spectacle. And I would be very like worried about that happening with this. Anyway, so they talk about the fox a little bit. And then Fox is faring poorly against jackals. We asked Augustus to banish Adrius. For a time he was, yet now he returns. A crime, I say. They nod. I thought they might blame him, but they seem very aware. Darrow isn't going to get to tell Augustus how to handle his son. So I was relieved for that. And this is when Daxos says, if you need us, all you need to do is ask. And Darrow's like, ooh. I know it's sort of fucked up for me to immediately cash that in, but honestly, yeah, I do need you. And Cavax immediately turns to his fox and says, investigate, Sophocles, investigate. And the fox comes at Darrow and climbs up him, digs into his pocket, and finds 2 jelly beans. And Cavax takes this as a sign. But it's very clear a little bit later that Daxo planted those jelly beans in Darrow's pocket when they hugged. And is aware his father is very superstitious. So, yeah, that was magic, Dad. Totally. I love when Darrow says, does he believe in magic? Forgive me, guys who are watching. I'm about to scratch my back with my back scratcher. It's just like driving me bonkers. Darrow says, does he really believe in magic? He says gnomes steal earwax from him at night. Mother thinks he's been hit too many times on the head. Daxo backs away, following his father, but he can't hide his clever smile as he pops a jelly bean into his mouth, and I see where the ones in my pocket came from. I say he just lives in a more entertaining world than we do. Dibs on Daxo, everybody. Just, somebody who's like a little bit mischievous, who isn't making fun of their dad for believing in magic so much as just like kind of playing along and humoring him. Somebody who's like intelligent and clearly brawny and, a little bit intimidating. I am interested. That's all. So this is when he goes and speaks to Roke. And as soon as he starts to say, I'm sorry, Roke interrupts. I don't want to talk about Quinn. I know you wanted this war. Engineered it. Instead of trusting me to buy your contract and protect you. What I don't know is why you drugged me. I wanted to protect you because I knew I would need you after the gala and I couldn't risk your safety. What about what I need? He asks. You don't have the right to make choices for me because you're afraid it might interrupt your plans. Friends don't do that. You're right. It was wrong of me. I nod slowly, meaning it. Wrong to stick a needle in my neck? Beyond wrong. But no, the intent was good, even if the idea and execution were as stupid as they come. If I have to get on my knees, there's an image. I know he's joking, but his face does not laugh or smile as he turns and walks away. So there had been a point when Severo was like, there are some people that maybe you could trust with the info, but Roke isn't one of them, and I was surprised. And maybe this is what Severo meant, that like Roke is too pissed. And if he found out about things, it's a sort of tie for me, whether or not he thinks it's this anger or it's because Roke just loves being gold too much and isn't as loyal to Darrow, or if it's just the fact that Severo loved Quinn and Quinn loved Roke, and he can't help but let that color his judgment of Roke as a person. There may be just some bias there. I personally kind of felt like Roke would be into this plan, would be able to handle the info before all of this happened. And a part of me is almost like, if you told him what you're working toward, maybe he would think that her death was like well spent, so to speak. You know, that she died for something genuinely important and it would matter. But he could very easily just go the other way, where he's like, oh, she died for some shit she didn't even know you were fighting for? Cool. Great. Extra you keeping shit from your friends, you know? So, chapter 28, The Storm Sons. This is when he goes to speak to Lorne au Arcos. And the conversation here, it's so interesting because Lorne clearly does love Darrow, and he's hyper aware of what Darrow is. But he has, it feels like, the same reaction to him that Mustang has, of, I sense a better man in you. I know he's in there. And for whatever reason, you keep pushing him down, and I am trying to give you every opportunity to let him out, and you're not fucking doing it, and it feels like cowardice, but I have a hard time believing you a coward, so I don't know how to reconcile the sense I get versus the evidence of your actions. They don't match up, and it's like fucking annoying, which I could really understand being fucking annoying. And this castle is made of limestone, set amid a sea 90 kilometers deep. What? It's like underwater? Like him, this castle is a harsh place when the storms come, but when the storms fade, sunshine will bathe this place, shining through her glass walls, glinting off her steel supports. Children will run its 10-kilometer length through its gardens, along its walls, down to the harbor. Wind will tickle their hair, and all that Lorne will hear from his library is the crying of gulls, the crash of the sea, and the laughter of his grandchildren. So he's not underwater, right? I think he was saying it's a limestone fortress set amid a sea, and the sea itself that it is set amid is 90 kilometers deep. Not that the sea is set, or the castle is set 90 kilometers deep. That was really confusingly written, but okay. Got it. And I love this. If all golds were like him, reds would still toil beneath the earth, but he would have them know their purpose. It doesn't make him good, but it makes him true. Interesting. So this conversation, it's so loaded, the two of them, you know, and there's a lot of subtext to everything. He mentions, my great-granddaughter was born last night. I still have the smell of blood on my fingers. And I was like, don't like it. He holds his hand out, and it's trembling. And I was like, what's going on here, bro? And then later he's like, oh, let's go find my pet in the woods. And I was just so on edge. I really was like, this feels like a fucking trap. And Darrow's not an idiot, you know? So the fact that Darrow was clearly up to something, dropping these little spikes, I was like, okay, Darrow has this handled, whatever it is he thinks is happening. But I can't tell what it could be, you know? And he says, there is honor in staying what you were. And Darrow says, sometimes we have to change. Not all of us are born as rich as you. And this is when he changes the subject and is like, let's go into the forest. When Darrow says, where are your children? I'd love to see them again. He says, East Wing, till you leave. I'm that dangerous? He does not answer. And another hint, and it's not exactly that Darrow himself is dangerous. It's the danger he poses in general, you know? So they walk past all of these servants, and it's specifically mentioned that he sees them as people and greets them all individually. And he leads them out into this forest that he has had built, basically. You came to me in a stolen vessel of war, asking for my ships and my men. Why? Because half of Mars is still held by forces loyal to the Bellona and the Sovereign. To free Mars from them, we need your ships and your men. Once we have them, the Moon Lords and the Archgovernors of the Rim will come to our aid against the core. So, you need me to aid in your treason. Is it treason for a dog to bite its master's hand when the master tries to kill it? I ask. Terrible metaphor. I really liked the terrible metaphor. I feel like it's not as bad as he's making it sound, but it is a little clumsy, and I just thought it was funny for him to just be like, eh. And then later on, when he mentions the fight with Darrow and Cassius, he just is like, that was a fucking prancy little dance you let him on. What the fuck was that? You could have killed him in like 2 seconds. And Darrow's like, well, I had to perform. I had to draw it out and make a show of it. And he's like, the fuck? No, you didn't. You could have just fucking killed him. And it's like, well, he didn't want to kill him though. That's kind of, you know. And he has this like interesting, when he mentions Aja Au Grimace, he really humanizes her here. And he's like, I know that she seems like some fucking specter, but she's a person. And she has her own family and people that she cares about. And she sees you as a threat. So she may be scary, but you're also scary. FYI, you have people you care about. You're a person. You're kind of reducing her a little bit to this like monster under the bed. And he says, I left the society not because it's sick, but because it's dead. And basically says everybody who is out here trying to like scramble to the top of the heap, they're all fucking scavengers. It's a heap of corpses as far as he is concerned. Nothing is left of it. Everything about why we were built, we have betrayed. We always do the same shit. We always have prosperity, and then we have greed. And then we have war because of the greed. And then eventually it settles down, and we grow prosperous again. And then we lose track of the fact that we've been through this shit before, and we go to greed. And I was just like, oh, this is too much reality for me. This really bummed me out. That's all I'm saying. So at this point, Darrow is like, look, help me and I can get you Lysander. And Lorne tries to be like, Lysander, he's barely even my blood anymore. He's just been told so much shit. And Darrow's like, okay, no, hold the fuck up. First of all, I know you're not somebody who's just going to disown a relative. Secondly, I have met this kid and he is way more like you than he is like her. Do you know him at all? Like, come on. You have to fight for him because he's not a bad child. And then we get the story of Augustus and what he has been up to. This is pretty awful, you guys. Yikes. Augustus was always strong. House Augustus, he's saying. They became the Lords of Mars. There was one family of greater power named Silas. And when your master was 7 years old, his father found himself in dispute with Julius Abelona, Cassius' grandfather. Nero's father attempted to have the Browns who served the Bologna poison the entire family at supper. The plan failed. A house war began. Nero's father summoned his bannermen and led them against the Bologna and the archgovernor Silas, who had declared his forces for Julius Abelona. The sitting sovereign did not intervene. Eventually, Nero's father found himself besieged and captured. Silas put House Augustus to death, sparing only young Nero from punishment. He was allowed to live so that an aged family that had partaken in the conquering did not disappear from history. And this story is actually a pretty good illustration of why people were jumping up and down to stomp on babies' heads, actually. It was said that Archgovernor Silas even gave young Nero grapes to quench his thirst because there was no water as the city burned around them. After that, he raised him in his own court. 20 years later. 20 years. You guys. Just stop and think about that. How this kid held on to this. 20 years. He had always been considered honorable and honest, and he asked for Iona Albollona's hand in marriage. And she was old Julia's favorite, daughter. So he marries her. It was a beautiful wedding. I attended, and I had a wonderful time. I'd never seen Iona so happy. But that night, when the Bologna family returned to their estate with the rest of their family, a package arrived. Inside, old Julius found his daughter's head, grapes stuffed in Iona's mouth, along with 2 wedding rings. Wow! 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 I'm not even mad. I should be so much more horrified than I am. And instead, a big part of me is just 20 years, you had this game going. She really thought she was in love with you. She was happy. This wasn't even just a political relationship, it didn't look like. It looked like a love match. That's how convincing he was about everything. Nobody knew. That is really scary. For them to have no inkling. He must have had his shit locked down completely. Hiding his emotions. I mean, that's impressive. I don't like to use that word regarding this, but it is though. And he gets Cassius' father and flies to the Citadel and asks for justice from Archgovernor Silas. But instead of his old friend, he found young Nero on the Archgovernor's throne, backed by Praetorians and 2 Olympic knights. I was among them, having been told that Silas was a threat to the society by my sovereign. I did what was commanded. I found out later, Nero contrived an agreement with the daughter of the sitting sovereign. You know her as Octavia Aulun. Younger then, she convinced her father to give Nero the throne of Mars and his revenge. In return, she earned Nero's support when she led the faction that overthrew and killed her father 5 years later. Well, well, well. These people are fucking toxic. Oh my god, I shouldn't laugh, but they are so such backstabbers that it's I can't help but be amazed that they manage to get away with what they do, because they all are so... it's just so unending. You know, it's just so fucking unending, this cycle. Oh my God. So Darrow basically just says, I didn't know this. Note that he doesn't say, you know, thanks for telling me, or if I had known, then things might be he does not say that. And like, for the record, this whole conversation is being transmitted via the old earpiece he's wearing, and Darrow did tell Lorne that it was being transmitted. So people who maybe didn't know this before, they fucking know now. And this is when he points out Icarus, who is a griffin, huge, the size of 4 horses, he is described. And he says that Martian carvers made him for the family. So then he accuses Darrow of maybe doing all of this because Cassius fucked Mustang. And Darrow is like, no, that is not what this is about. And he's like, oh, God, that sucks. If that had been what it was about, I would have at least understood it, you know? Like, now, because that's not what it is. This is such a pain in the ass. This is a whole other story. And he says, I would not have raised you to be a great man. There is no peace for great men. I would have had you be a decent one. I would have given you the quiet strength to grow old with the woman you love. Now all I can give you is a chance. Icarus, he booms. His griffin stirs by its side. The ground shudders as the creature moves. And he points up to the ship, and it says she's no longer alone. 10 torch ships come for her. A Praetorian death squad waits for you inside my home, Darrow. They will take you, chain you, and bring you before the Sovereign. They arrived days ago. What could we do? They have their fleet. It will destroy your ship, but I don't want you to die. So Icarus will take you to an island where I have hidden a ship for you. Use it to escape. Later, Darrow sort of throws it in his face because he tries to be like, I tried to help you. And Darrow's like, yeah, exactly. You tried to help me. Everybody else, you were like, well, fuck them. Too bad for them. And you were about to let me just sail off on this fucking thing while my friends died. Come on, man. You had to know I was not going to take that deal. And then Darrow is like, look, man, I know you want to retire, and I get it, but I can't let you do it. As I speak into my calm, I tell the Howlers to prepare to rise and the Titans to bring the ships around. And poor Lorne is like, wow, okay. I guess you really are in Augustus' house. What a piece of shit. Like, he's just so angry. I prepared the trap before I even left the fleet. All secrets find themselves whispered into Pliny's ears, and he would wish for nothing more than my timely demise, particularly after I provoked him in the Archgovernor's meeting. So he did his work. He schemed and plotted and found himself an ally against the big bad Darrow Andromedas in the Sovereign herself, a fact that I will be happy to share with Augustus as soon as possible. I am fascinated by this turn of events because Augustus specifically said to Darrow earlier, when he accuses him of being a Democrat, Darrow says men are organized as they should be already, at least most of them. And Augustus is like, oh, except for Pliny, huh? And he's like, yep. And Augustus tells Darrow, I'm not an idiot. You know I'm not. So maybe you want to consider that. That maybe there's a reason I keep Pliny right by my side. Just something to think about. And that's got me wondering if this will actually come as a surprise to Pliny or not. Or to Augustus. Like, Does he know that Pliny is doing this? Was he seeing whether Darrow would be able to take care of himself? I can't imagine that's it, because if Darrow goes down, the whole plan is shot. But maybe he was like, if he can't defend himself against Pliny's planning, then, then we're screwed. I genuinely don't know if he's going to have seen this coming or not. But anyway, and what they did, he describes as smart but predictable. You knew, Lorne accuses me quietly. You knew. And he knows what this means for him. It's not simply my victory. It is his defeat. One way or another, he must ally himself. And Darrow says, yeah, and it's going to look like you knew and that you told me. She is never going to believe you that I just figured it out, that we had information. She's going to think you fucked her over. So, sorry, but you're part of this now. What can you do? And eventually, he says, I put my family at risk to help you escape. And you betray me like this. You betray me like the others, like Aja. You look for pity? You let me come here, Lorne. You would have consigned my friends above to torture and death, even as you gave me a path to escape. Hate me, but fight at my side. Only then will your family survive. And I love this. He starts to be like, I should kill you. And Severo chimes in and is like, yo, can I just take care of this? And he's like, no, Severo, no, not right now. I could have my fleet destroy yours, boy. Not before mine takes the sovereigns. But she would know where House Arcos stands. She would know that you tricked me, that my house is not part of this. Then do it. Launch your ships if you think my cause evil. Put me down if you think me a monster. But you know the heart that beats inside. Choose me or choose that darkness. I nod down the hill of the forest garden to where we entered the place. 12 obsidian Praetorians file through the same glass door we used. Huge men and women in black and purple armor, skull helms. Only one stained, this one thinner than the others, like a winter asp standing on its tail. His armor is white and splashed with colors like blood. So Aja shows up and is like, wow, Lorne, you're a traitor? Didn't see this coming. And Lorne's like, no, we're not part of this. And she's like, yeah, I'm so sorry to inform you, sir, but you don't get to just not be part of this. And Lorne is like, Darrow knew you were here. I don't know how. I just want to be left alone. And she's like, yo, that is not an option for you. Come on, man. You had to know that already. You don't get to just step aside. That's not how this works. And he's insisting, I want no part of it. I will not have my hand forced. And he calls himself a man of peace. And I was just like, weird. It seems like you're carrying a sword. Weird thing for a man of peace to even have. So, I don't know. I think you should use it. Come down and let's deal with this. Her ships are lost, I whisper to Lorne. What would Octavia have her do? Kill us for spite. I lower my voice. Then you have no choice. This is when he sets off the bombs. Kids, the bombs go off, and the gravity means that the arms and legs that got busted off of all of them just float slowly to the ground. Even the blood doesn't spatter. It beads up like mercury in the air and falls slowly. This is wild sounding. Like, this is the stuff I'm talking about that I really would love to see on the big screen. Meanwhile, everybody is like trying to get Darrow to give them permission to go after the Aja and the Praetorians. And Roke is super angry at the fact that she's starting to get away. And at one point is like, if Quinn's killer escapes, and Darrow has to be like, okay, dude, you are going to need to set that aside. Your job is dealing with those ships up there, and you're taking damage and men are dying. So can you fucking focus and let that go for a second? And he's 100% right. Roke, my guy, I get that you're grieving and you're angry. You have got to keep your eye on shit. What are you doing? Stop it. Get your head in the game. Christ. So, anyway, at this point, when they have taken care of these guys and Aja has fled, they have to think, now what would her move be? And Lorne realizes, oh my God, she's going to kill the fucking kids. She's going to kill all the children. I'm off the board. She can't reach me, but she'll do that. And they have to sprint back, and they find the guards that had been put over the kids dead, and Tactus standing over them with his razor out. And we find out that Tactus' mother calls him the mighty servant. This is so awful. Like, you're basically telling him to be a bully to prove that he's like bigger and badder than Darrow. It's so fucking gross. Like, ew. Oh my God. And Tactus says, she asked me if I could fill your place, said she didn't think I could, said I was so long in your shadow, she didn't know if I would ever be more than an echo of you. I told her I could do anything you do. This is about the Sovereign. And he accuses Darrow of taking him for granted, not telling him anything. Always whispering with the others, dismissing me like I'm a fool. You're just like her. That was interesting to me. I don't know if that's true. I can see that he thinks it's true. I haven't really seen that, but it's hard to say. There are times where Tactus has been left out, but I don't know if it's like, because like he hasn't been trustworthy. So to a point, why would he tell you things? But he's sort of the opposite, like the chicken before the egg. You need to trust me before I can be loyal to you, which I do sort of understand, you know? I don't think that he should expect it to work that way, but I see why he would. And he admits he's not sorry I took Lysander, but I think I shouldn't have done it. I was testing you at the Institute, but I wanted to see what you'd do, if you were worth following. Was I? You know that answer. Am I still? He nods. Always. Saying it so pathetically that it feels like my heart has been pulled into my throat. He's a traitor, a liar, a cheat. Yet I see a friend. I want to fix him and make him whole. What am I doing? I have to put him down. But I've done that before with Titus. That cycle erodes us. Death begets death, and ever more. And he finally says, what if we just let it go? What if I let you back and I forgave you? And Tactus immediately is like, the fuck you would. And Darrow's like, no, I'm serious. I saw the way you reacted to the children being murdered. You aren't a bad person. Come back. You'll carry a standard. You can be by my side. But Severo, Roque, Victra, they miss you. I lie. Drop your razor and come back to my army. I promise you will be safe. I've got to be honest, I don't know if Darrow can promise that. I'm not sure this would work. I believed he was sincere and that he'd do his best. And I even think that maybe the force of his personality would be enough. But I can't fully trust that. The anger they feel toward him, I don't know if Darrow forgiving him will make him look stronger or weaker. I genuinely don't know. And you know, like, Severo's here watching this. So he knows that Darrow was extending this opportunity, even if things don't go the way he intended here. Is Severo going to spread this all around? Is he going to let everybody know he was willing to forgive it? Will this weaken things at all? I don't know. And finally, Tactus drops his razor. And I should mention, like, the explosion ripped half his face off. He is in pain here. But yeah, he wraps me in a frantic hug and sobs into me, body shaking, bloody features painting my armor. I'm sorry, he says 12 times. He's weeping hard into my shoulder, clasping tight. His face is such a ruin, and I hug him. His sadness is like a weight that nearly drives me to tears. Yet I'm buoyed by the strange feeling of having him back, standing with me, gripping me. It is a humbling thing, knowing someone cannot live without you. Knowing that though they betrayed you, they wish for nothing but absolution. Oh, you guys. And he says Tactus is like the example about the Golds. They are toxic fuck-ups. And they have to be broken, but then they have to be given a chance to do better. I think that's what EO would have wanted. And I really liked that. I really, really did, you know? When at last his sobs are done and we part, he stands at my side, loyal as a puppy, looking to me subtly for signs of affection. So finally, everybody leaves except for Lorne. And once they're gone, he's like, all right, now that the kids are fucking gone, you got to take your medicine, kiddo. And he drives an ion dagger up into the armpit of his armor, the weak spot. He twists like he's wringing a towel, severing the artery. Tactus' face wrenches with pain, and he gasps as though he knew justice would finally find him in the end. Lorne leaves, and I hold my friend as he dies, his eyes fading to some distant place, where perhaps he'll find that peace Roque always wished for him. So heartbreaking, you guys. I got so choked up listening to this the first time. Like, and it's what I wanted of Tactus, you know? This is exactly what I was like thinking was likely for him. I thought it would take longer. I didn't think he would die as a result. And I'm so disappointed that he doesn't get to prove himself. I would have loved to see what he was capable of when he wasn't trying to stab Darrow in the back. But, again, I do not blame Lorne. I think asking him to have been okay with serving beside somebody who was about to kill his children, I'm sorry, that's a lot to ask. And I'm just not mad at him for that. So, all right, kids, I'm going to wrap up. But this was really, what good chapters. And I hope y'all are enjoying the content. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
was an Unspoiled Network podcast.